Ladies and gentlemen of the crypto space, I'm jumping on the stream a little early. I want to see if we can get things prepped. Guys, do me a favor, make sure that you keep me up to date on audio. I have some bit of a complicated configuration going on here. Obviously, I have Zoom on the right. So we'll see how this works. In theory, I got this right. Hope I do. But keep me posted. First thing I want you got to tell me if you double hear me. You hear me, so Zoom might be playing my audio, and I also might be playing my audio. So just keep me posted. Jared will be on in a minute. He went to go take care of a couple of things, and I think everything looks good. Sounds good on your end. Good. Yay! So that means I got one of the audios right. Let's make sure that I get Jared's audio right. Very nice. Thank you, Charlie. Appreciate that. Everyone's in the house today. Whoa! It's a big room. Craig's in the house. Nigel's in the house. Yeah, DigiByte just nimble. Michael's here. Charlie's here. Wow. Chill, KJ. Cool. KJ, what are you doing here, bro? My man. All right, so what do I got up on the screen? While Jared's getting prepped, a lot of what I want to talk about today is because of Jared's massive dated experience with the world. He lived in China, and I want his own words about his experiences, about the culture, about the people, and about his opinion of what's going on. Because this, as much as a lot of people are probably in here about digi, as Duncan says, yeah, this is all related. It's all related. And to understand DigiByte, you have to understand the global macro financial narrative and what's quickly becoming the global macro crypto narrative and what is playing out in China, in politics, in government, and the financial crises that are all unique to every part of this planet right now. What do I have on the screen? I got the BSN. They just launched this portal today. This is big, and it looks really good. And this is from China, meaning this is straight up like the Chinese government pushing their national blockchain strategy. And this is straight up perfect English. Looks like a product that came out of an English-speaking country. It's just a really well done, top-notch presentation, and they are dealing with. Let's pull it up. Well, let's pull up the BSN. They are dealing with 6 blockchains. Look at this. It's launched. This is huge, guys. This is huge. And look at it. Oh, this is a great article. It's complicated because the blockchain tech, you can't, there's no shutting it down. There's no bypassing it. There's no bans. There's no censorship. It's permissionless. There's no more tit for tat, government stupid politics, baby behavior, immature, whatever it is. I don't have patience for it anymore. I want just a picture of the blockchain tech of the chains that they're pushing. Here we go. This was the picture I was looking for. So the initial BSN launch is basically Ethereum, EOS, Tezos, Nervos, Neo, and IrisNet. So they're all smart contracts. This is all smart contracts. This is intelligence, the software, the brains, the processing, the Turing complete application execution on the blockchain. And that is what is so big about what's playing out here. Um, you need the brains, you need the execution of code, and then you deal with data. You deal with data management, and that's where UTXO blockchains come in. As I have said it time and time again, DigiByte is overwhelmingly perfectly suited for record management, record storage, and asset management. And that's it. Guys don't have to look into it too much. You don't have to say why is it bigger than Ethereum. It's not one winner take all type of world. All of this is a big picture. It's a narrative, and they all play a role. They're all connected. It's all related. And that's the whole story that I try and tell over and over again, or in slightly different ways, and I try and elaborate on. James, are going to miss the stream for a minute? No! Oh, wouldn't miss the stream. Yeah. Welcome. David's in the house. Nelson's in the house. Kathy's in the house. Tevo's in the house. Nigel's in the house. Jared's coming in the house. Connecting, connecting. Jared, I hear something.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Oh, we got audio. I got Jared on my mic. Now I need a confirmation from the stream. Do we hear Jared? Do we hear Noah? What do we hear?
Can you see me?
Yes, we got
Okay,
you. You're
perfect.
live.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah, I totally realized you'd already sent me the Zoom link, so had to go up above and find it. So
Very nice. It's a pleasure. I thank you kindly for joining my stream. This is a
well, thank
joy.
you. Thank you for having me on.
And it's exciting because this is the first time I ever tried to finagle this type of software configuration. So I got audio connections from outputs going to inputs, and apparently it works.
It
Hey,
works. Yeah, my audio is coming through. I can see you. I can hear you. Looks like people in the stream say it's good. So shout out to everyone out there watching.
we are 5 by 5, ladies and gentlemen. All right, I gave a preface to what's on my mind, and we have a very large audience today. This is exciting, and really the big picture is what I like to think about, and that is exactly why I have Jared on. And I know that everyone who joins in the stream, everyone loves the Digi. I love the Digi. I wrote the Digi Android app. Jared's got a Digi T-shirt on. Jared is the face of DigiByte in so many regards. Taking a step back, has nothing to do with mutually exclusive, of course, but it's all related. And to understand why one would want to allocate value to an asset like DigiByte or to any asset in the crypto space, you need to understand the macro financial narrative. You have to understand the big picture, what's going on with countries and financials and the central banks and the politics and the geopolitics, the relationships between countries and the games they play and the services that literally China is starting to offer, because I think that this might be one of the largest macro narratives going right now. And clearly, you got DeFi, which is everything's up 1,000%. Like almost every asset I can think of is up like 1,000% right now. And let me just, everyone's in the room. I got to show them DigiByte. It's breaking out from a very large symmetric triangle. This looks oh so good, everybody. It's a beauty. So keep your eyes peeled and look at DigiByte on the hourly, everybody. It looks gorgeous. It's above the 200 EMA. It's above the resistance.
Yeah, I was
Um,
surprised when I woke up this morning. I haven't checked anything for like 3 days, and I was like, whoa.
oh, it's gorgeous. This is a beautiful chart.
Yeah.
There's two charts. Interesting. Not to. I want to go back to the topic, and I don't want to eat too much time. But there's only two charts that are as huge as this. Like here, let's go out to the weekly for the fun of it on DigiByte. This is a massive symmetric triangle. It spans a time frame that's pretty much like the December 2017 rip. That's obviously up to 800 sats. It is just a very large time frame symmetric triangle, and there's only one other chart in the crypto space that I found that's even bigger, and that's Atom, which is basically Cosmos Hub. So Cosmos is huge, and this kind of plays into the topic that I want to talk about today. Cosmos is where IrisNet is, and IrisNet is one of the blockchains that the BSN has launched with. So, and this is an even bigger symmetric triangle. This dates back to March of last year. It is just, if it ever reloads, it's absolutely huge. So what is the narrative here? The narrative here is things are changing, and the stuff that means a lot, that's going to make a difference in the infrastructure of society. These are the things that we want to pay attention to the most, because in this crypto season, it's not what's going to go up or what's going to go down, everybody. It's basically what's going to go up more. And to understand that, you have to understand the big picture and where these different projects are going to fit in. So that's where I would like, Jared, welcome. I've given my monologue. I talk way too much.
Oh, it's great. It's great. I love it. I love listening to hear your analysis and everything. It's fantastic. No, you're absolutely right. I need to start things off. The quote that comes to mind is, there are decades in which nothing happens, and then there are months in which decades happen. And 2020 has been one of those years where, this is, historians 50, 100 years from now are going to look back at 2020 as one of those pivotal points. I think on par with the last time we had was probably the end of World War II, where you just had some massive geopolitical shifts. We went from the pound sterling to the US dollar as the world's reserve currency at the end of World War II, because the British, the former British Empire was in shambles. And that's how 2020 is shaping up. We talked about it in the book Blockchain 2035. We're heading towards a multipolar world. And what I mean by that is you've basically got two spheres of influence now. You've got China and you've got the United States. And everything that they're doing, I was actually this morning just going through their info paper for this BSN network. I'm not surprised by anything in there. Mainly because if I go back to 2016, I think it was October 2016, I was invited to speak in Beijing at their National Blockchain Summit. And what was fascinating, besides the fact that they changed my time and they didn't have a translator there, so I was literally speaking to a room full of Chinese people that didn't understand me, and half of them were sleeping in the back, so it was it's kind of funny. But I got to see some of the other presentations, and I don't speak fluent Mandarin, but you could tell a lot by the pictures and the data, and they basically laid out their plan right there, in front of me. And what I thought was fascinating is one of the leading researchers had this document from the UK. Basically, in 2016, the UK had made blockchain one of their top priorities for national security. So China felt that they should do that. And then, we later saw that out. They want to be the leader in cloud infrastructure. They want to be the leader in artificial intelligence. They want to be the leader in quantum computing, and they want to be the leader in blockchain, right? We saw last fall when Xi Jinping came out and said, yes, China needs to be the national leader in blockchain. And what's fascinating, if you go into the info paper for this thing, they go into a little bit more detail. So they talk about the blockchain service neck founders. The number one thing listed is Government Agency State Information Center of China. Number two, telecommunications industry, China Mobile Communications, which basically there's 3 nationwide run telecoms in China. And then number 3, China UnionPay Corporation and China Mobile Financial. So, and then number 4, Beijing Red Data Technology. So this is like an all of government approach on the Chinese side to be the leader in blockchain globally. And what I find fascinating is the comparison they make in the beginning is like the internet, we know it has been architected and connected by TCP IP. Well, they're basically talking like they're going to replace TCP IP with the blockchain service network, where they basically have all these effectively Oracle nodes. So that's what they're calling, what do they refer to them as? Well, basically the cloud server provider. So what's also fascinating is Google and Amazon are involved with this. I was actually just reading, so which is not surprising. But this really, they've been working on this plan and they've been very organized around it for quite some time. Now, here's the thing. Just as with anything in China, they've set this up where they can basically control and censor things at will as they need it. And if you take a lot of the different information and stuff going together, alongside with Russia, there is a movement by several countries out there to remove the US dollar as the world's reserve currency. So, I think they're going to probably succeed in the next few years, at least probably in the next 12 to 24 months. You're already seeing trade deals that are being settled outside of the US dollar. And that's a large part of what this blockchain service network is going to provide. It's going to provide, China that basically say, hey, if you want to do business with us, get our goods and manufacturing, you got to use this payment system. You got to use this cryptocurrency, right?
What's even more interesting is it's not just that they're not even going to have to leverage countries, is what I'm kind of getting the sense. It's because you know what blockchain is. You built blockchain. You built the foundation, like literally the roots of blockchain and a UTXO asset, and of those roots have given fruit to the Ethereum network and the Turing Complete and the smart contracts, which has given Polkadot and Cosmos and Elrond and Tezos and Cardano, if they ever get smart contracts implemented. And it's just a massive explosion of potential. So I would go so far as to say it's not even that they're going to require people to work with this system, to work with China. The countries are going to want to, because this is crazy tech. This is tech that takes business and cuts out red tape and layers and inefficiencies and takes operating potential of enterprise to a whole nother level.
Well, and what's fascinating, if you actually look at the architecture of this platform, it says here the architecture of BSN compromises or is composed of the following key parts. Number one, public city nodes. Public city nodes are the basic operational element of BSN. Their main function is to provide system resources such as access control, transaction processing, data storage, and computing abilities for blockchain applications. The owner of each public city node is the provider of cloud resources. The owner installs public city node software in the cloud. So you can't even run a node for this. Like, you've got to use it in the existing government infrastructure.
So here's the kicker. So yes, and I can see that they want to control that. So here's what. Let me highlight the common shared structure of these smart contract platforms that they're launching with, other than Neo. It's not Ethereum either, but Ethereum eventually. But Cosmos, probably first and foremost, but Tezos as well, have the concept of these validators, and people can delegate to validators. So basically, these public nodes, whether the validators are controlled by government or not, it's still giving the general public a capacity to delegate to a validator. And this is somewhat ties into a theme of MMT, where the general public can literally participate in the national blockchain infrastructure. And that just blows my mind.
Yeah, no, it is super fascinating. We have all the way, decentralization in blockchain technology is a spectrum, right? You have the completely centralized projects all the way over to a project like DigiByte, right? And then now, obviously, as we move to mainstream everyday adoption, you're going to have somewhere in the middle, and there's going to still be variations. There's still going to be a spectrum. But if you look at here a little bit further detail, a lot of this is actually built on Hyperledger.
Let's go.
And you've got the IBM, and the Linux Foundation and stuff, but there's a different form of encryption, which I found fascinating. I'd never heard of the Chinese SM2, SM3 encryption algorithm. So far, largely when it comes to encryption algorithms, it's been Western dominated for the last 50 years. The Russians have developed some of their own encryption algorithms, but this is the first I'd heard of a Chinese encryption algorithm. So I find that fascinating. I want to dig that out a little bit more. SM2 and SM3. So it's pretty fascinating. It's the next, here we are 83 days from probably what will end up being the most contentious presidential election in the history of the United States. And right now, as an American, I see the United States going one of two completely different directions in the next 90 days. And it's frankly kind of terrifying, but also kind of liberating on what could be at the other end of this. Once we get the election behind us, it'd be fascinating if you actually saw some more enthusiasm on the U.S. government side for this. And if I go back to January, the last time I was in Washington, D.C., we went around to several congressional offices. We talked to some people. There's definite interest because, one, you have China making this play, so that tends to light a fire, up under some politicians' butts. But this virus, it's completely, the pandemic has hit the United States. I think it's completely just crippled it politically. Not just the fact that there's still shutdowns and lockdowns everywhere. And it's definitely a real virus. I actually myself caught it about a month ago for the second time, and I'm not gonna lie, the brain fog fatigue that everybody talks about, that's a real thing.
Yeah.
About a month later, I'm just kind of now finally feeling like myself again. So, is that one thing? I went out to dinner. Pretty much one of the only times I've been out in public, and everybody I was with caught it and test positive for it. So it is definitely super contagious. But anyway, what would be awesome, is if the United States would get in this. But what I'm afraid of is when you have this move to ban TikTok by the U.S. government, and I understand the reasons they're doing it, and WeChat, but it is unprecedented. The internet has been the land of the free, but it's the internet here that we live in 2020 is far more censored. Every social media platform censoring people. Google search results, I don't know about you, but even when I'm doing developer stuff, the Google search results, compared to like 2016, it's completely different. I have to go to DuckDuckGo a lot of times to get what I'm looking for. Just because if it's a publisher that doesn't meet their criteria, it's completely removed from the search. And it's not even stuff that's political. And they want to push you towards services that they control. And, it's absolutely terrifying that the internet that we have grown to love over the last 20 years is now being used and weaponized as a form of social control. And this is why we need blockchain technology more now than ever, truly decentralized. And
they will fight back. The meaning it's a war in some regards because and the governments have such leverage and power, and they have a capacity to roll out this tech aggressively and fast at national levels, cross-continental in some regards. But the general public, obviously, historically, has a capacity to do things from a grassroots perspective, meaning this entire industry thus far has been a grassroots production. So this is where networks like Polkadot, which is not currently in the BSN, and networks like Cardano, which is not currently in the BSN, have a capacity to grab roots and perform without these government tentacles, so to speak. So UTXO is a whole another story. And that it's uncontrollable. Obviously from a mining perspective, it's controllable in some regards, centralizable, but it doesn't have this smart contract, that type of functionality. So it serves a very different purpose in this global system that we're starting to see emerge. So funny that you mentioned U.S. government. Now, I tweet at Tom Emmer, as Tom Emmer does Blockchain Caucus.
The Congressional Blockchain Caucus, yeah. I'd
love for him to ping, just say, "Hi, Noah, I'm sorry, I'm trying." Because, man, these guys
I missed that one. Yeah.
They're doing nothing, man. It's horrible.
So what's fascinating, when I went around to the congressional offices, I went to the Congressional Blockchain Caucus, and, I just want to tell them thank you. Thank you for starting a Congressional Blockchain Caucus. But the problem is, let's be honest, if you look at, the whole Senator We Sell ads, right? Like, I'm not trying to be age discriminatory here, but, some of these people have been in office their entire lives, right? And, when they got into Congress, the internet wasn't even a thing, right? They were before cell phones. So, explaining this groundbreaking technology to some of these people, can prove to be rather a little difficult. But, one of the things I just saw this morning was actually sent to me is the United States Department of Energy released a strategic blueprint to construct a unhackable nationwide quantum internet. And so I was actually just reading that. And, if you know the history of the Department of Energy, before that, it was the Atomic Energy Commission. So a lot of innovations that have come out, in computer science and stuff have actually came out of the Department of Energy for the last 40, 50 years. But going back to your point earlier, what's fascinating about blockchain technology in the open source world being a grassroots movement, this is kind of the first time technology has been driven by we the people from the ground up. Before this, the internet was created by DARPA. Encryption was created, large part by the NSA and like other groups and government funded stuff. But because of the open nature of the architecture of the internet, you're able to crowdsource, talent and information and amazing people that want to be a part of something. And I believe that will always continue to outpace any sort of private funded or, secretly controlled research. Because if you look at these government initiatives, it's all built on the open source stuff that we've spent the last decade working on. There's really nothing innovative or game changing about what they're proposing, other than they're just trying to control it. So when you were talking about the government tentacles, the beautiful thing is, I don't know if they're ever going to be able to get their tentacles around this. The cat's out of the bag. And it's mathematics. Like you can't, stop math, basically, in computer science. So yeah, that's what's exciting, about this time. Go ahead. Sorry.
It's very exciting. There is an aspect of it that is not stoppable without literal physical intervention, like we've seen in China, as you suggest, with regard to the mining operations in China being physically interruptible. And that's really, in many regards, what, at least from a proof of work standpoint, would require for government intervention. But proof of stake introduces another degree of resistance, because it doesn't require hardware, it requires trivial electricity and basic connectivity. And then anyone could participate, and it's a bit even more decentralizable. Obviously, if there's no malicious intent, but obviously the POS, someone could have 1 billion tokens, and even if everyone else has 10 tokens, it's highly centralized. So it's very complicated, the centralization, decentralization debate, and how to achieve an optimal network. So,
yeah, it's a spectrum for sure, and there's nothing wrong with that. I've always been a proponent. There needs to be multiple blockchains. There needs to be multiple projects. And every day you're seeing and hearing about new stuff. I mean, it's just like, I can't keep up. I check the news every day. I had to write a shell script to open like 15 different websites so I can go surf stuff, right? And then I just have a bash command, for news, and then bam, but there's just so much happening. And it's pretty remarkable. Like, going back to that quote, there are decades in which nothing happens and months in which a decade happens, and if you look at, the executive order the president signed on Saturday, which, besides being unconstitutional and surpassing Congress, which you'll see how that plays out. That's a whole nother story. The fact that here we are, last time I counted it out, we were like, what, $8 trillion in stimulus this year, and yeah, sure, it's great. You look at the price of, DigiByte from when this pandemic started. I love the Twitter account that shows the $1,200 stimulus that keeps updating. Whoever's doing that, like, that's great. Thank you. Because I love seeing that in the feed, and it just kind of puts it in perspective. But also, the reality is, $1,000 in DigiByte is not the same as it was even 10 months ago, 8 months ago, so the inflation that's coming in the United States, it has to. I mean, you cannot print this much money. You're going to see it, the asset inflation, and you're already seeing it in real estate. My home state of Idaho, like, it's absolutely crazy. Not to mention all the people moving from New York and California that were already moving, but they're like tripled their pace. But same thing with Austin. I mean, Austin, even though everything's been shut down and locked down basically since February or March, I mean, there's still people moving there every day just because they're fleeing the high tax states and going where they, quote unquote, can buy affordable property.
Yeah.
So it's, my outlook when I started January of 2020 is completely different now. You know,
Oh
like my
goodness.
24, 36 month outlook, it's a completely different world. It's not even the same world as January.
Yeah,
Um,
what's so notable about what you say about the 8 trillion? There's no going back. There's no turning back. What they unleashed is a decoupling, and it's basically goes into MMT, and it goes into well, dollars no longer meet the definition of money. Money requires a store of value component. And you print 8 trill, you're going to destroy the purchasing power of the dollar. So basically, we're heading in the world of MMT, and MMT is they have to get rid of paper money to prevent hoarding of dollars and the negative interest rates, as overwhelmingly they might be forced to do. And it's the exodus from the dollar of holding the dollar, and because if you have inflation and the purchasing power is being destroyed, you can't hold dollars. You have to hold an asset. You have to hold the real estate, which is going up in value. You have to hold the equities, which is going up in value. This is like the same thing in Venezuela. You see Venezuela's stock market is up tens of thousands of percent because their fiat is destroyed. But if you have your money in equities, you're still able to live because you're not making money, but your purchasing power isn't being destroyed because as the equities increase in value, it offsets inversely the purchasing power destruction. So as Jared just said, with the DigiByte going up in value, it's not. It is going up in value more than purchasing power destruction of the dollar now, but that might not be the case in the future. And get just as I've talked about on my stream, everyone, you're not going to have a bull run in fiat. Oh, the dollar, it's going crazy this week. It's up 400%. So just use the fiat as a transfer of value because every schmuck in this country is going to take dollars as payment because they don't know any better. That's really what it is at this point. They don't. I don't know why anyone's not taking crypto in broad strokes at this point. They just don't know any better. There's no other explanation. So you have what you need to pay your bills, but you get your value out of the purchasing power destroyed in progress of being destroyed dollar, and you put it into assets. Some equities, that's a whole other topic. I've talked about it on the stream. Gold streamers, gold miners, they're doing very nicely. And crypto assets that we'll continue to talk about to understand the fundamentals, um, the big picture narrative, how they fit into this whole macro framework, their value, their functionality. And that's how we can make good choices based on data and information. And information that's coming out of Jared's brain. Because, man, when you talk about China, I'm absolutely fascinated because such a big world and there's such different cultures here's one thing about China here's one thing about humanity that I firmly believe. I know there's such hostility in this country and look, we have it internally. There's this whole left versus right and people liking and not liking Trump. I'm like, I don't judge people by anything other than the words that come out of their mouth. What do I think of them as a person? Now, interestingly enough, you can't really judge a person unless you know them, which is something John McAfee says, which I happen to agree with. Do you really know them? Have you really seen something? Have you actually gotten that information firsthand? Otherwise, it's just what if I heard, and it's a construct of narrative and story in many regards. So the whole point of what I'm trying to get at is, I like to think that what they're doing with the BSN is incredible, that they're brilliant people and wonderful people with history and culture that I absolutely love, and they want better lives for their people. I see the good in people. I see the good in technology, and I think that it would be brilliant if China's deploying chain link nodes all across the country, from what I know, and if there's iris nodes across the country that the population could be delegate to validators and they have a source of revenue, whether it's a UBT or however they want to structure it. But I think that's incredible. If I could take my crypto assets in the US, because this is what they're going to be able to do in China, and delegate to the Florida node, and that's where I get some of my revenue from. And I could do that with other aspects of technology that the country is strategically creating and deploying. That would be a brilliant, or at least innovative and creative way to move forward as a country, instead of the only thing these fuckers can do is print money. And I just find it so pathetic and shallow and like old, like what are we gonna do, Minucci Bucci? What are we gonna do? And Jerome says, well, Minucci Bucci, why don't you turn on the printing press a little bit more? And Minucci Bucci's like, all right, Jerome, we're going to turn on the printing press. So obviously Jerome Powell from the Fed and Minucci Bucci from the Treasury. Anyway.
So so as you've been talking with that great monologue there, I've been watching it's called truthinaccounting.org, and it shows the U.S. published national debt versus the truth. Because, there's those researchers that have went through and analyzed the budget, and they found that the actual so right now, the published national debt, well, first of all, this whole thing went up $1 billion while you were talking. Second of all, it says the published national debt is 26.5 trillion. But the real actual number that they found is actually 133 trillion now. And this is just coming from analyzing Federal Reserve statements, everything that's publicly posted, right? So while you were talking, it went up $1 billion, just a couple minutes. It's absolutely crazy. So yeah, that seems to be the answer for everything. Just print more money, print more money. Whereas China's approach, and I have a great deal of respect for the Chinese people. Living there, they're very nice people. Crime rate is actually fairly low, much lower than any major city in the United States, basically in these giant mega cities. Hardworking, if you compare, there's a lot of hardworking Americans out there, but, there is this generation, of entitlement that you don't see in China. Everybody's basically just working. They still work 6 days a week, 10-hour days. A lot of these places, Monday through Saturday. So it's a very hardworking people. But unfortunately, what's happening is, China is trying to position themselves to be the global, leader, and they want to be the Saudi Arabia of data. They've publicly talked about this. So the data coming from this blockchain service network ties into their AI strategy. And because they have all these centrally controlled services, they have data points on, not only their own 1.3 billion people, but because of the services like TikTok and other things, as they've extended around the world, they're able to gather more and more and more and more data, and that's why they say the AI, arms race. And, they are winning right now. So it's going to be, fascinating to see how this rolls out. But my biggest fear, and not just on the Chinese side, but also, the same could be done on the US side, is that you end up with this technocracy where you have a handful of giants controlling every aspect of our everyday lives. I look at my life today versus 5 years ago. I wake up in the morning, I have a smart light that wakes up that's on a timer that's in the cloud. I go to the gym and I have an iWatch that takes my vitals and stuff that goes to the cloud. My phone in my is constantly pinging my location and recording it. I can go back in there and you can see everywhere you've been for the last 6 months, right? It's constantly listening. This computers, but all this data and information is going to the cloud. Security cameras. I have a robot vacuum cleaner that can tell me every time I vacuumed my house for the last 3 years. It's a little creepy. And then when you look at, there's a book that I've been reading here. I've actually read it twice. It was so good, by Dr. David Sinclair, Harvard geneticist, called Lifespan. And after reading that book, I genuinely believe you and I could reach the age of 150 because the advances in genetics, life extension, and the fact that they've been able to reset the clock and let, your cells regrow and start over fresh. And then basically you go back from 50 to 30, right? And you just reset every decade or two. It's coming in the next 10, 15 years. But our genetic information and our genetic data when we start, and it's already happening, but when computers merge with biology and machines, which it's moving that way, we're going to see some dramatic changes in the next 5 to 10 years,
Yeah.
specifically with our own genetic information. And if we don't take steps to protect that data
Yeah.
and protect who has access to it and to protect how it's stored, how it's handled, we're in for a very dystopian, crazy future. If we have a technocratic elite that can control and pull a Monsanto, where basically if we get some injection and part of our DNA is their thing, and then we have to pay them for upgrades to our own body, there's plans out there for this kind of stuff. And that's why I think blockchain technology and cryptography and we the people taking charge of our own data is the most important thing we can be focusing on and doing right now. I mean, you hear the horror stories, and I know we've talked about it, and but when somebody gets their data and identity stolen,
Mm.
and the fraud, and it's an antiquated system. But then when you throw the genetic element on top of that, it's
Oh my
absolutely
God.
terrifying.
Genetic theft. Oh. So what I find so fascinating about what you talk about is what is the same thing, is what's going to play out in such a short period of time over the next couple of years. And what is almost obvious at this point is two things. Because the governments are just ancient money, ancient families, the global elites. They have power that goes everywhere. It's all tied together, and they're going to deploy this. I mean, BSN's getting deployed. Some country is going to compete, then another country is going to compete, and they're all going to be competing. And it's going to be a blockchain arms race at the national level, and IrisNet's going to be worth $10,000 a token. No, don't, guys, don't. But it's already up like 100, it's 200% this morning because of the BSN launch. So, point being, there's going to be two worlds that I see, and it's so obvious. But unfortunately, the vast majority of people are not going to. And it's the same thing with fiat. It's like the people that use fiat today, they know nothing other than fiat, and they're basically spoon fed what the government gives them to live their lives. Now, all we can do, from what you're saying, is have the tech to preserve our individual sovereignty, our individual rights, our individual identity, to control and manage our information. And that's all we can do. We can't force a government to deploy it. We have absolutely no leverage over these fuckers. They have all the
Yeah.
power. They have all the mega family. Folks out there think these billionaires like Bezos is a big deal. No, the people that have power, the families that have trillions of dollars, like collectively have trillions of dollars. Now it's on a whole nother level.
Well, I
I
mean,
don't.
if to be realistic, the what we think is government and the state is very antiquated here in 2020. I mean, you have tech companies, often owned in large part by some of these families you speak of, that basically have more control than the U.S. government. They have more ability, more data, and more information on us than the U.S. government does in a lot of cases, and it's been a flip flop. And I believe this technocracy that's emerging, this these centralized providers of every aspect of our life, is creating a wealth gap that is larger than at any point in the history of the world. And then so you ask the question, do you really want to live to be 150? Because if some of these people have the money, the time, the resources, they'll get the technology for that first, and they'll further consolidate power, over the time. But what ends up happening is basically you really do end up with two, you have digital overlords, and then you have we the serfs. And if we don't take charge of our data and we don't protect our data and information, we're screwed, because
That's
it's
horrible. We are screwed, but we don't have to be. And that's the thought that I have all the time. It's the disparity that's emerging. I sit back here in the pandemic. I had two jobs for the better part of the year. One of my contracts is going away, and I have this great sense of survivor's guilt. Where so many people are having such just horror stories. I've seen brief glimpses of the tragedy that's going on some news broadcast of people that are in their 60s. They worked their whole lives. They started buying properties, and they're rentals, and that's their business, and nobody's paying rent. So their entire business that they built over the last 20 years is unraveling, and they're declaring bankruptcy, and they're 70 years old, and they have nothing left, and the great disparity really is the people that know nothing other than fiat. People, they get a paycheck, they go paycheck to paycheck, they get dollars in their account, they pay their bills, they have debt, it's all fiat. They know nothing other than fiat. And the thing that breaks my heart is anytime you talk to someone such as this, and you say, why don't you invest? And I swear I could cry over it. They say, because I don't want to lose any money. And it's just, it's not even gut wrenching. It's not like distaste. It's heartbreaking because it's just that goes back to education and just and really education and the disparity is just it's people that know fiat and nothing other than it, and then the people that are aware of this technology, of not even just technology, of just assets and investing and financial skills and management. But that's the whole point of this conversation and a lot of what I talk about on the stream. It's the big picture that counts. And the more knowledge and information and conversation we could have, the better we could take care of ourselves and help other people. DGB is pumping.
There's. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. No, what I was going to say is it's absolutely the fact that they don't teach, I guess, financial literacy and what fiat currency really is in school. I think is a huge disservice to people around the world, not just in America, because, if you look at the history of fiat currencies, there have been 152 fiat currencies that have failed due to hyperinflation. So statistically, why is the US dollar going to be any different than the other 152 that have already failed?
It's not possible for it to be different.
82 lasted less than a decade, right? And so it's the average lifespan is 7 years. So this is going back historically, like 400 or 500 years, basically since 1682 or 6, whenever the Bank of England printed the first paper money. So statistics and history are not on the side of the fiat experiment. And it's like I've said in other interviews, and I say all the time, the US dollar itself has been completely reinvented the way it functions 5 times in the last 110 years. You had the establishment of the Federal Reserve in the beginning, and back then you had interest rates that were set locally. So the interest rate in New York was different than San Francisco because at the time the economy functioned differently. It wasn't as intertwined. And then at the end of World War II, from 1913 to 1948, the world's reserve currency was the British pound sterling, right? It wasn't the US dollar. Well, it was also gold backed. So then at the Bretton Woods conference, they switched. And then again in 71, when we went off the gold standard and effectively went on the petro standard, the way money functioned completely changed. And then you have the emergence of derivative markets in the 90s. And then, basically 2008, the way the dollar functioned completely changed, because we went quantitative easing. We will never see interest rates, where they were. Again, it's impossible. And then
where they were, 0.5%, a tenth of a percent. You can't do 1%. They'd never be able to pay it. It's not
they
possible.
Couldn't pay it. That's why if you look at the Chapwood Index, which I love it, I can't remember, it's a university professor that puts it out there. Your purchasing power of your dollar has declined on average in the United States 12% annually. So if you've got $100,000 in your bank right now, 12 months from now, you're only going to be able to buy $90,000 worth of goods and services. And this has been on average since basically 2014, 2015, right? And so you keep having that, and it's very depressing because what you're seeing an entire generation in America of people that have been savers, like you said, like these individuals in their 70s that are being destroyed and they don't even know it. They still think, that they're purchasing power. I have this issue with my grandmother. My grandma just turned 81, right? And, and she thinks going out and a meal that's more than $10 is crazy expensive. When I first moved to China in 2013, 2014, you could go out and have, a dinner and a beer and a couple drinks with 2 people for like $30. You do that today, in any reasonable city, you're looking at $100. just for a meal for two people and a couple drinks.
Yeah.
And if you really put that in perspective, but you have this, generation of people that retired, they worked hard all their life, they were told the system, and it's being destroyed. While at the same time, the richest people in America have made almost $700 billion in the last 8 months because of this pandemic.
So they're jacking up the money supply, and there's no velocity of money, and the purchasing power is destroyed. So you have the inflation, which is not going into it's going into the purchasing power destruction, but it's going into assets. That's where the vast majority of the inflation is just funneling. So there's only one way to protect yourselves, and you can't just say you got to buy crypto. You have to have a diversified portfolio, everyone, and you have to exit fiat in the vast majority. You can't, as Rich Dad Poor Dad, you can't. Savers are losers. I don't.
He even says that. He even came out and said that. He's like, everything I wrote in Rich Dad Poor Dad 30 years ago doesn't make sense anymore. Like I listened to an interview that he did a few months ago, and he's like, yeah, it's absolutely crazy. He's like, I wish I would have never wrote that book because it's still misleading.
Different.
Yeah,
it was a different.
It was a different system. Yeah, it was a different, and that's the hardest thing with my own parents that I've had to. I'm like, look, the system that you grew up with, this work hard, save hard, that mentality that that built broken. America, it's broken, and it's sad, and it's just a matter of like educating people and waking people up. But yeah, I mean, look at gold and silver, and it's and. So putting on my tinfoil conspiracy theorist hat here for a second, and I'm not going to give, I guess, like election predictions and results, because I got to be honest, I really don't know what's going to happen with this election. Had you asked me in 2016, even March, I would have told you straight up, Donald J. Trump's going to be the next president, and it's going to piss everybody off, but it's what's going to happen. You could just kind of tell. Here we are in 2020. I don't know. It could go one or the other way. I'm kind of hedging my bets for like the two different things, but the crazy part is the spectrum of the two different possibilities and ways this country can go is absolutely astounding, right? However, there is a lot of evidence. Like if you look at the move that President Trump made with the Federal Reserve a few months ago, effectively nationalizing it, which
Treasury,
under the Department of Treasury, which was unprecedented. I've heard rumors, I've read things, I've seen things that if he does get a second term, there could be a massive reset of the US dollar. And that could happen in a couple different ways. We could basically, one of the stance, there's some analysts that are out there that give some pretty good arguments that if gold was revalued to basically $90,000 an ounce,
90, ooh.
It would wipe out all the United States debt.
Jim Rickard says 15.
He says 15. Well, is that before the pandemic or after?
That's a good point.
Because, so Jim Rickards has said this. There's several people that have said this. Hey, you just get a revaluation in gold and you could wipe out the U.S. debt and then reestablish like a fractional reserve. However, I don't know if that'll happen, but it's interesting to think about. And if you see that kind of movement, you're going to see that in crypto, I believe, too. Crypto's the wild card in all of this that a lot of these, mainstream economists, they never talk about. They ignore it, but it seems like it's not going to go away. So it is that third middle ground between fiat and precious metals. But if you do see this kind of dollar reset, I mean, you had Christine Lagarde with the IMF talking about the global reset for some time now. I think you could see some really big moves happen financially, in terms of the way our financial system works. However, that process, I think, is going to be quite destructive for some people. You can't go in there. But I really don't know what's going to happen over the next 6 months. But I can guarantee you it is going to be a wild ride from here on out over the next few months. And I honestly believe it's going to be a contested election, and we're not going to have it's going to be a repeat of 2000 and Gore Bush, and we're not going to know for several months. And there's already lawsuits piling up.
The volatility is incredible. Absolutely incredible. What do you do? There's only one thing you can do for everyone listening is you take in as much information as possible, and you need to be diversified, because one way or another something's going to happen. Crazy stuff's going to go down, and whether they reset currency, which I think is overwhelmingly reasonable. I hear it from the gold bugs all the time. We all hear it from the Bitcoin maximalists all the time, and crypto maximalists in general, that why aren't we using crypto as some sort of currency? I mean, look, that's a big topic amongst the UTXO fans. Like, why aren't we using this as a means of payment, which is a currency in many regards? The main purpose of a currency is transfer of value. Money is transfer of value and store of value. So be diversified. Please don't, and educate as many people as you can to, you can't just be in fiat. You're going to bury yourself in unknowns and uncertainty. And the answer is to be diversified. And that's what I like to talk about so much on this channel, is to protect yourself, and protect yourself in as many ways as possible. Obviously, being mentally prepared by understanding as much as possible this global macro narrative, but also being diversified, because you work too damn hard for your value and your wealth to watch it sit in a bank account getting destroyed by people in Washington that don't understand a simple UTXO blockchain, yet alone these incredibly sophisticated smart contract networks that have the potential to do incredible automated software tasks. And we're not going to get into We're not going to get into this now, but maybe if Jared's so kind to come back, I'm happy to talk about DeFi, because you guys know I love to talk about DeFi on this channel. Woo! So that's all software. Bye-bye tax agencies. Bye-bye Social Security. That's all automated. It's all done because...
Yeah.
And why? And here's the most interesting thing. Why will it change? It's almost inevitable. There's three things that are required for inevitability. Tech needs to work. Tech needs to be profitable. And you have to assess the disruptability of the target market. Let's take a look briefly at... tax authorities for like a transfer of a title. In Florida, we sit down at a tax authority. They hold the escrow, and you transfer the title after you make payment. So why do you need people doing that? Why? This is all smart contract executable. The tech works, one. Does it save money? You just eliminated HR. You eliminated entire companies and replaced it with software and developers auditing software. So some sort of parent company is saving millions, if not billions of dollars. And how disruptible is it? Yeah, if you can save millions and millions of dollars, it's quite disruptible. So this is exactly what's about to play out over the next couple of years. And unfortunately, 4 minutes, one minor rant. Unfortunately, one of the biggest changes coming is robotics, and it's a bit heartbreaking, because do you see McDonald's hiring back staff, or do you see them deploying robots working 24 hours a day with no HR, no insurance, nothing? They just work 24 hours a day. It's a completely automated process. Why are they going to build out HR? There's no incentive. They're going to save millions and billions of dollars in a time where this whole financial system is forcing companies to trim and save money. This is what's going to happen over the next 5, 10 years, 15 years.
Well, you know what was absolutely amazing is the other day I went and I had a Toyota 4Runner. So, you know, not an expensive car, but a nice durable car. Well, I went to sell it at the dealership, right? And the process of going through, like here I am almost... probably about 2 weeks later, and they still haven't sent the payment for the auto loan. And they sent me a check of the difference because I made a little money on it. And the fact that process, they had to give me a check, they had to send a check, all that stuff takes 2 weeks is just mind blowing. And this is like the main high end Toyota dealership, right? It's not like a small town used car lot, right? And it's just absolutely astounding that even like in the mortgage industry, some of the ways the process, like, and you look at the technology we're dealing with, it's kind of a like, okay, the stuff we're talking about, we're involved with, even with DigiByte, the stuff that, we were talking about in 2014, 15 is just now hitting the mainstream crypto space. So the stuff we're talking about it's still going to take a while to get to that point. But that's why there's so much opportunity in this space and for the DigiByte community, because I believe 100% why we've tried to do these things like DigiID, DigiAssets. The future revolves around your wallet. And that wallet not only will hold your financial security, your financial instruments, your financial estimates, but your data. And that's where I believe in the future a wallet will be the home for your genetic information, medical records, stuff like that. And that's why it's so important. And that's the future we're building, and that's what we're working on, and we continue to do every day, because the future is coming. And once again, just to rehash, if we don't take charge of our data and cryptographically lock it down with our own keys ourselves, it's a scary dystopian future when you have a bunch of technocrats that can manage and track every little single biometric detail about you in real time. And that's where governments become obsolete. Like I said, our notion of Western government is completely being changed and altered. And if we don't make some changes here for the good in the next few years, it is a scary dystopian future. So
I see it as well.
I'm an optimist, so I do believe that the glass is half full, and the cat's out of the bag. And that's one of the things about the DigiByte community that absolutely blows me away, is how many smart, talented, very intelligent professionals there are that are in the DigiByte community globally. Thank you all for what you all do every day, because without you, none of this would be possible. But because of you going out there, sharing information, spreading the word, that's the beautiful thing about a grassroots movement and project.
As everything that Jared says and more about what has gone on with the DigiByte community over the last couple of years. DigiByte is a critical mass decentralized UTXO blockchain that will exist in perpetuity. Critical mass meaning it has all the momentum it needs to exist. And that is all that it needs to ensure its consumption, adoption, and utilization. It has all the time. And when the corporations are looking for the public utility to store records and manage assets, there is no other UTXO chain to consider with regard to protocol properties. It's as simple as that. You're not going to do this stuff on Bitcoin. It makes no sense. It's not its purpose. It is not what its purpose has become. The clear purpose of Bitcoin is indisputable. It's value storage. It's so. Was it 1 o'clock? It's a decaying inflationary asset which ensures value appreciation. And it's not what Satoshi wanted, but that doesn't matter. If Satoshi was alive today, I think he'd be pretty damn impressed with what he started, or if he's watching this. So the purpose of the DigiByte is record storage and asset management because it's fast. The difficulty adjustment ensures consistent block timing. There's no other UTXO asset that could do what DigiByte does in this regard.
It's great. It's a great way to end it, I guess.
Yes, so. Indeedy. So many people on the chat with so many questions. I haven't even looked at the chat. We're going to do a live stream tomorrow. Folks, join, ask me some questions, and I'm going to compile some thoughts, and maybe I'll harass Jared for weeks on end until he could find some time, and we're very happy to provide you gentlemen and ladies out there in the crypto space with more information to make the best decisions possible for yourselves and for your families. So I thank you all.
It's important, I think we're heading through this election. All I could advise people is be prepared, have a little extra food and water on hand, and I'm expecting some crazy stuff to go down, and to be honest, it wouldn't surprise me if we even saw like an internet outage, either from foreign nations, cyber attacks, or internal, or anyway, just be prepared. That's my, I guess, tidbits moving, and whatever. The beautiful thing about democracy is you can support whatever side you want. I personally hate the fact that we only get two options, and we really don't have a choice, I feel, in a lot of ways, but we do have a choice with what we do with our money and our data. And that's, I think, the most important thing.
My man, I love it. Thank you, everyone, for joining. I really appreciate it. I will see you all tomorrow, and that is the name of the game. I wish you all a wonderful day.
Yep. Have a good one. Thank you, everybody.